Good morning, all of you. Today we are going to talk about Mark Twain. Mark Twain was an eminent American author. His real name was Samuel Langhorne Clemens. He was born on November 30, 1835 at Florida, or in the small river town of Florida, Missouri, just 200 miles from the Indian Territory. He was the sixth child of John Marshall Clemens and Jane Lambton. They lived in Florida, Missouri, and this child, he just shifted to Hannibal as the family moved to Hannibal in hopes of improving their living situation. By lineage, Twain was a Southerner, as both his parents' families hailed from Virginia, the slave-holding community of Hannibal, a river town with a population of 2,000. It provided a mix of rugged frontier life and the Southern tradition, a lifestyle that influenced Twain's later writings, including The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. He is most noted for his novel, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, and its sequel, Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, the latter often called the Great American Novel. Few black slaves actually resided in Hannibal, and the small farms on the Delta were no comparison to the typical Southern plantation. In Hannibal, blacks were mostly held as household servants rather than field workers, but were still under the obligations of slavery. In his youth, Mark Twain was a mischievous boy, the prototype of his character, Tom Sawyer. Though he was plagued by poor health in his early years, by age 9, he had already learned to smoke, led a small band of pranksters, and had developed an aversion to school. Twain's formal schooling ended after age of 12 because his father passed away in March of that year. He became an apprentice in a printer's shop and then worked under his brother Orion at Hannibal Journal, where he quickly became saturated in the newspaper trade. He grew up in Hannibal, Missouri, which, of course, provided the setting for Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer. He apprenticed with a printer. He also worked as a typesetter and contributed articles to his older brother Orion's newspaper, Hannibal Journal, and rising to the role of sub-editor. After toiling as a printer in various cities, he became a sub-editor. He indulged in the frontier humor that flourished in journalism at the time, told tales, satirical pranks, and jokes. However, over the next few years, he failed to save any money and he became restless. He decided to leave Hannibal in June of 1853 and accepted a position in St. Louis. Soon afterwards, rather than settling in St. Louis, Twain proceeded to travel back in and forth between New York, Philadelphia, Washington, and Iowa, working as a journalist. After his wanderings, Twain ultimately switched professions, realizing an old boyhood dream of becoming a river pilot. Under the apprenticeship of Horace Bixby, pilot of the Paul Jones, Mark Twain became a licensed river pilot at the age of 24. He earned a high salary navigating the river waters. He was entertained by his work and enjoyed his traveling lifestyle. In 1861, when the Civil War broke, Twain's piloting days came to an end. After returning home to Hannibal, Twain learned that military companies were being organized to assist Governor Jackson, and he enlisted as a Confederate soldier. Within a short period, he abandoned the cause, deserted the military, and along with thousands of other men, avoiding the draft, moved west. On his way to Nevada, 12 years after the gold rush, Twain's primary interest was to just try his hand at gold mining. So he started that work, but when he proved to be a failure, he again turned his attention to journalism. While a reporter, he wrote a humorous story, The Celebrated Jumping Frog of Calaveras County, which became very popular and brought nationwide attention. His travelogues were also well received. Twain had found his calling. Now, he joined the staff of the Virginia City Territorial Enterprise and became an established reporter humorist. In 1863, he adopted the pseudonym Mark Twain, derived from a river pilot term describing safe navigating conditions. In 1869, he published his first book of travel letters entitled Innocents Abroad. The book was criticized widely and discouraged Twain from pursuing a literary career. In the years that followed, Twain published various articles, made lecture circuits, and relocated between San Francisco, New York, and Missouri. During the time, he also met Olivia Langdon, whom he married on February 2nd, 1870. In November of the same year, their first son, Langdon Clemens, was born prematurely. The Clemens family quickly fell into debt. However, when over 67,000 copies of Innocents Abroad were sold within its first year, the American Publishing Company asked Twain for another book. Upon Olivia's request, the couple moved to the domicile town of Hartford, Connecticut, where Twain composed Roughing It, which documented the post-gold rush mining epoch and was published in 1872. In March 1872, Twain's daughter, Suzanne Olivia, was born, and the family appeared prosperous. Unfortunately, Langtons soon came down with diphtheria and died. Twain was torn apart by his son's death and blamed himself. Moreover, Roughing It was only mildly successful, which added to the family's hardships. After traveling to Europe for a lecture series, Twain experienced a turning point in his career. Twain's newest novel, The Gilded Age, written in collaboration with Charles Dudley Warner, was published in 1873. The novel is about the 1800s era of corruption and exploitation at the expense of public welfare. The Gilded Age was Twain's first extended work of fiction and marked him in the literary world as an author rather than as a journalist. After the broad success of the Gilded Age, Twain began a period of concentrated writing. In 1880, his third daughter, Joan, was born. By the time Twain reached the age of 50, he was already considered a successful writer and businessman. His popularity skyrocketed with the publications of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, The Prince and the Pauper, and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. By 1885, Twain was considered one of the greatest character writers in the literary community. try to study or look at his masterpieces, we will find that they are concerned with freedom and adventures. They are adventure stories. His main concern was to depict the conditions prevailing in society. He wrote about slavery, and he was a writer who concentrated on the not only the social conditions but also the economic conditions, and at the same time indirectly the political conditions or the class struggle is also one of the aspects of most of his writing, the rich and the poor, the slave owners and the masters of the slaves. It is a kind of work which is a broad spectrum of humanity in general. Now, he himself was a lover of adventures, and therefore he has tried to depict or to portray such characters who are fond of taking risks and who are fond of trying new activities, and they are ready to face any kind of dangers. And in his works we find that the characters that are portrayed or pictured do not belong to the same class of society. There is a great variety, and it seems as if Mark Twain was a great psychologist. His features or the characteristics of his writings are full of local color. Now, the language used is not that of the civilized society. It represented social life through portraits of local places which he knew best. He drew from his own rich fund of knowledge of people and places. They say that the person who is depicted or who is portrayed as Huck's father was a real life drunkard who lived near his own house. And he was a keen observer. He tried to just notice the behavior of different people. Like Chaucer, we can say, Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, we find different characters belonging to different classes. In the similar way, the characters portrayed in the works of Mark Twain, they also represent different classes. And these people belong to particular areas. The language that he makes them speak is also that of the people which belong, or who belong, sorry, who belong to different classes. And on the basis of his own experience, various experiences, he just managed to write tall tales, and though it is, of course, highly exaggerated for the purpose of creating humor. Humor is a main trait of Mark Twain's writings, and life is dull without humor. So we can say that it was the intention of Twain to give a tinge of or a shade of humor to sustain the interest of the readers, because in a narrative we have to take care of various elements. First is the narrator. Second is the events narrated. Third, the way they are narrated. And of course, audience also has an important role to play. So, Twain has managed to tell his tales or the stories in such a way that they are not merely stories narrated, but we can say that his novels are more of picaresque novels, novels which deal with travel or the road, be it the road or the river road, because river also moves in some direction. We find a texture of most local color, a kink of humor, and of course, simplicity is there, and we find that this simplicity, or you can say sincerity, is an important or integral part of Twain's works, and it is a kind of a truth revealed from the very depth of a person's heart or experience. Now, if you try to narrate a story, you cannot do it, or you cannot make it impressive or effective unless and until you are good at communication. So, for communication, for any kind of expression to make it effective, you cannot be dogmatic, or you cannot be a person trying to use language in such a way which takes you in a different place, or you can say which does not help you to understand what the person wants to speak about or what a person wants to communicate or express. Now, a special quality of his works is that he has used colloquial language, or you can say vernacular and dialects. Now, these the words used by him, they are very effective, or they have been taken from real life. Now, they are short, they are concrete, and they are direct in effect. Now, herein lies the magic of this master writer. His sentences and structures are also very direct, very hitting, and very effective. Now, they are simple and sometimes even ungrammatical, but it is American dialect. We can say he was an American author in the real sense, and he tried to use an American language. Mark Twain was the first truly American writer, and all of us, since are his heirs, who descended from him. About his writing features, we can say that humor is one of the conspicuous element. His writings, his sentences, his works, they are full of witty remarks, mocking at small things and making people laugh. And it helps to maintain and sustain the interest of the readers. It is a kind of artistic style used to criticize the social injustice. Literature is an art of language. Mark Twain's language is artistic and like a sharp weapon, without doubt. Mark Twain is famous for his humor and satire. His humor is based on the humor of the Western in America. He used a lot of colloquial idioms and colloquial syntax. He often described persons who were innocent, simple, naive, and ignorant as his heroes or heroines. He used the artistic style of hyperbole on the basis of Western traditional humor and made his writing full of allegories that lay behind the humor. I think it is enough for today.